Essence believed she had met a stranger at the coffee house. What she did not know was that when Allen Sinclair looked at her, he thought someone from his past had returned. Before we begin, please like, follow, and share. If you are watching on YouTube, subscribe to Whispers of Grace Stories and follow the Kindred Spirits series. A new story is released every Thursday. This is Kindred Spirits, Season 1, Episode 4. The Face He Never Forgot. 2 years earlier, Allen Sinclair sat at his usual table near the counter of the coffee house, watching people rush in and out with cups in their hands. The place was only half a block from Sinclair Marketing, where Allen worked as a marketing executive under the name of the man who had adopted him. He had never imagined himself selling ideas, managing accounts, or sitting in meetings with wealthy clients. But Jonathan Sinclair had treated Allen like a blood son, not an obligation inherited through marriage, and Allen had spent years learning the business because he wanted to prove that Jonathan's faith in him had not been misplaced. Out of all the men Maribel had manipulated, deceived, or used, Jonathan was the only one Allen considered genuine. Sometimes he still could not understand how his mother had convinced one of the most successful marketing executives to marry her. Allen looked around the coffee house and wondered how so many people could enjoy being surrounded by strangers. Regular customers greeted one another, employees remembered orders, and conversations crossed between tables. Allen had been coming there long enough for people to recognize him, yet he still preferred to remain an observer. Watching others was easier than allowing them close enough to watch him. He had never liked crowds. Solitude was what he knew. He had spent most of his childhood alone, not because he was an only child, but because Maribel's entire existence was devoted to becoming the woman she imagined wealthy men wanted. She studied rich women the way other people studied for careers. Allen remembered sitting on the floor while Maribel watched television, copying the way affluent women crossed their legs, held a glass, laughed, walked into a room, and spoke to people they considered beneath them. She bought fashion magazines and cut out pages featuring designer clothes, luxury homes, jewelry, and expensive vacations. Then she glued the pictures into scrapbooks and called them her study guides. She purchased convincing knockoffs, practiced wearing them, and made Allen judge whether she looked like she belonged among the wealthy. At first, he thought it was a game. Then the game consumed his childhood. Maribel stopped allowing him to stay after school, play outside, or participate in activities because she needed him available. Sometimes he helped her create stories to tell men. Other times he sat quietly while she entertained someone's husband, boyfriend, brother, father, or son. Maribel used whatever money she received to dine in expensive restaurants, rent luxury vehicles, and place herself wherever wealthy men gathered. She had learned how rich people lived while working as a housekeeper at a well-known cleaning service. Later, she studied and taught herself office skills, then got a job at a temporary agency, and was placed at a corporate firm. Allen briefly believed she had found legitimate work she enjoyed because of all the work she put into getting it. He hoped she would stop scheming and stop bringing strange men into their lives. Instead, Maribel simply moved her operation into more profitable rooms. She gained access to executives, business owners, and men with expense accounts. Soon, the fantasy began to look real. She drove an expensive car and jewelry that Allen knew she had not purchased. Their apartment was filled with designer shoes, handbags, clothes, watches, makeup, and accessories he never heard of. Maribel was happiest when she was surrounded by luxury and male attention. Eventually, Allen stopped waiting for her to change. He accepted that his mother had dreams large enough to consume them both, and he was simply another tool she expected to use. He had never known what it felt like to have a mother help with homework, attend a school program, or spend an afternoon with him simply because she enjoyed his company. Maribel did not build relationships without a purpose. Even motherhood came with an assignment. Allen had seen too many men enter their home and take whatever Maribel allowed them to take. He hated being a boy because one day he would become a man, and he was terrified of becoming anything like the men he watched. Then, almost by accident, Allen made a friend. Her name was Lily. She lived in the same apartment building and attended the same school. She was the only person who spoke to Allen on the bus and sat with him during lunch without asking what he could give her. She was soft-spoken, friendly, and almost always smiling. She loved flowers and could name nearly every plant growing in the neglected patch of soil behind their building. Allen liked listening to her describe them. Lily made ordinary things sound important. She also loved her church and doing things with her family. Some children teased her because she was different, but they learned not to do it when Allen was nearby. He defended Lily because she was the only person who made him feel as though his existence was not a mistake. When Maribel would leave home, Lily would always come to Allen's apartment to hang out. Lily cared about him, not the things surrounding him. Whenever Allen admitted that thoughts about his mother made him angry, afraid, or ashamed, Lily told him to go into the bathroom, lock the door, and pray. Allen followed her advice so often that Maribel became convinced he had a stomach problem. She never knew he was sitting on the closed toilet, whispering prayers he barely understood. Maribel wanted nothing to do with church or spirituality. When she was young, her mother had blamed the church for Allen's grandfather leaving the family. In Maribel's mind, religion was a force that brainwashed people. So when Allen begged to attend church with Lily, Maribel refused. Every Monday after school, Lily would bring Allen notes she took from Sunday school. They turned his apartment into their own small church while Maribel was away. They sang songs quietly and prayed together. Allen always looked forward to spending time with Lily at the apartment, the bus, and school. For the first time in his life, he felt loved and seen. Lily was his best friend, his only friend. One Monday afternoon, while singing songs, Allen felt a sensation move through his hands and down to his feet. He began crying before he understood why. His knees gave way, and he fell to the floor. Lily knelt beside him. Of all the days Maribel could have returned early, she chose that one. The apartment door opened. Maribel stepped inside and froze when she saw Allen on the floor with Lily kneeling beside him. Then she screamed. She ordered Lily out of the apartment and told her never to return. Maribel grabbed Allen, pulled him upright, and shook him until he focused on her face. Allen tried to explain that Lily had not harmed him. He told Maribel that Lily loved him, she would never harm him. Maribel refused to listen. She said Lily had placed a spell on him. She called the girl a witch and warned Allen that if he continued listening to her, he would become brainwashed the same way Maribel believed was the reason her father had abandoned her. Allen knew the accusation was irrational, but he also knew what happened when he resisted Maribel. So he obeyed. He stopped visiting Lily openly. He avoided her in the apartment building and kept his distance when Maribel might be watching. Losing Lily felt like losing the only safe place he had ever known. Eventually, they began writing letters. Allen passed notes to Lily on the school bus. During school, they found moments to talk. After school, they would leave letters for each other in a secret place inside the apartment building. Lily filled her letters with humor, things about her day, places she went with her family, and encouragement. Sometimes she drew small flowers around the edges, turning ordinary notebook paper into something Allen protected like a possession of great value. He read each page repeatedly before hiding it, afraid Maribel would discover that Lily still had access to the part of him his mother wanted to control. She told him that being born into Maribel's life did not mean he had to become like her. The last letter Lily wrote was about them moving to a big city when they grew up, have good careers, and get married. One night, Allen read the letter over and over while Maribel was away. He fell asleep holding it in his hand, like it was hope. The next morning, Allen woke with Lily's letter still folded between his fingers. He hid it inside his backpack before Maribel could see it. While getting ready for school, he overheard her bragging on the telephone about a penthouse and the life she was finally going to have. Allen assumed she was entertaining another fantasy. Later that day, he was called to the school office. Staff members began saying goodbye to him, but no one explained why. Through the office window, Allen saw Maribel standing in the hallway, dressed as though she were attending an event instead of picking up her son. She drove him downtown to a building larger than any place they had ever lived. An attendant took the car. A doorman greeted Maribel by name. Inside the elevator, she pressed the button marked PH and entered a code. When the doors opened, Allen stepped directly into an enormous living room. He asked why they were there. Maribel smiled and told him it was their new home. Movers had already packed their belongings from the apartment while Allen was at school. They would not be returning. Allen did not care about the penthouse, the view, or the furniture. All he could think about was Lily. Maribel had moved him without warning, and Allen had no way to tell Lily where he had gone. He did not know her last name, her parents' names, or any address beyond the apartment building they had shared. The only part of Lily he still possessed was the letter hidden in his backpack. Living in the penthouse changed nothing that mattered. Maribel remained absent. Allen remained alone. The surroundings were more expensive, but the silence felt the same. Within a year, Maribel began seeing Jonathan Sinclair, a wealthy widower with no children. Jonathan was younger than most of the men Maribel pursued and more sincere than any of them. He believed Maribel was extraordinary. Most importantly, he wanted a family. Jonathan did what none of the other men had done. He married her. Maribel moved Allen from Louisiana to a sprawling home near Crest Haven, where Jonathan could oversee one of his growing marketing firms. Moving had become normal to Allen. Jonathan asked Allen about school. He attended events. He taught him how to shake hands, look people in the eye, and speak with confidence without pretending to be someone else. Jonathan did not treat him like baggage attached to Maribel. He treated him like a son. On Allen's 16th birthday, Jonathan surprised him with adoption papers. Allen St. George became Allen Sinclair. His birth certificate changed. His future changed. He became an heir to Jonathan's business and fortune. The adoption gave Allen more than a surname. It gave him legal proof that someone had chosen him without being forced, bribed, or manipulated into doing it. That mattered more to him than the money, though Maribel seemed far more interested in what the new documents meant financially. For the first time, Allen experienced the security Maribel had spent her life imitating, but Maribel did not enjoy sharing Jonathan's attention. She persuaded him that Allen would receive better opportunities at a private school in California. Allen understood the real reason. Sending him away returned Jonathan's focus to her. After graduating, Allen moved back to Crest Haven. Jonathan trained him in the marketing business personally. Allen studied online through a respected business school, earned a bachelor's degree in marketing and a master's degree in economics, and spent 6 years learning every facet of marketing. He wanted to understand the company well enough to deserve his position. Over those years, Jonathan and Allen became close. That relationship made it even harder for Allen to watch Maribel return to the behavior she had promised to leave behind. She wanted more money, more access, more attention, and more influence, even when she already possessed more than she had once imagined. Allen hated seeing Jonathan deceived. But whenever Maribel needed help hiding something, she reminded Allen of everything that could be lost: the house, the company, the inheritance, Jonathan's love. She had trained Allen since childhood to believe that protecting her was the price of keeping whatever stability entered his life. Even as an adult, he remained afraid that refusing Maribel would cause everything good to disappear. Sitting inside the coffee house that morning, Allen finished his drink and stood to throw away the cup. That was when he saw her. For a moment, he forgot how to breathe. Lily. The woman stood near the counter holding a fresh arrangement of flowers. Allen knew 20 years had passed, but the resemblance was enough to make his childhood rush back into the room. The soft features, the thoughtful expression. The flowers were held carefully in both hands. It had to be Lily. Allen moved toward her before he could reconsider. "Those are beautiful flowers," he said. "Did you get them nearby?" The woman looked up at him. Her face was familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. "No, I grow them on my patio. I picked these for a friend." Her voice was not Lily's. Allen felt both disappointed and embarrassed, but he continued the conversation. "Do you sell them?" "No, it's just a hobby." "That's unfortunate. I would have bought some." She smiled. "I could bring you a mixed arrangement tomorrow." "You would do that for someone you just met?" "They're flowers, not a kidney." Allen laughed. The ease of her humor surprised him. "Do you have lilies?" "A few. Their season is almost over, but I can bring some." Of course she had lilies. "You're a sweetheart. I'm Allen Sinclair." He handed her a business card. The card carried the title marketing executive, but she did not react the way most people did when they saw the Sinclair name. "I'm Essence." That's an intriguing name. Allen walked away before his interest became obvious. He spent the rest of the morning thinking about the woman who looked enough like Lily to reopen a part of him he had buried. Essence was not Lily. He knew that. Yet the resemblance unsettled him. Lily had been the first person who made Allen feel safe, seen, and worthy of love. Now, years later, a woman carrying flowers had appeared in the same place where Allen sat nearly every morning. He wondered where the real Lily was and whether she had ever tried to find him. During high school, Allen searched for her on social media. He hoped to locate her and visit during school breaks rather than return to the empty Sinclair home. But he had never known enough. Lily had remained a first name, a face, a stack of letters, and one letter he still kept hidden. Allen attempted to focus on his staff meeting and client appointments, but Essence followed him through the day. The next morning, she returned with calla lilies, roses, and flowers Allen could not identify. He accepted them as though she had given him something far more valuable. After that, Allen began arriving at the coffee house earlier. Essence appeared often enough that their conversations became familiar. He learned that she worked from home editing books. He learned that she wanted to become a writer. He learned that she grew flowers because caring for living things brought her peace. Allen asked her out. Essence refused. He asked again a few days later. She refused again. Most women who learned who Allen was became interested before he finished introducing himself. Some recognized the company name. Others noticed his clothes, watch, or vehicle. Essence saw the title on his card and looked back at him as though none of it answered the only question that mattered. Who was he when the impressive details were removed? Her refusal did not insult him. It made him curious. After several weeks, Allen began to suspect that she was not rejecting him because she disliked him. Something was holding her back. He did not yet know about Kaulin, the twins, the addiction, the treatment center, or the assault Essence carried in silence. He only knew that she seemed drawn to him and afraid of what that attraction might require. Allen decided not to give up. One rainy afternoon, after spending most of the day reviewing paperwork, Allen realized everyone else had left the executive floor. Jonathan was in Louisiana handling family matters and reviewing another business venture. Allen felt no urgency to return home to his townhouse. Allen was reading a contract when he sensed someone standing in his office. He looked up and found Maribel near the doorway. His secretary had already gone home, which meant no one had been there to warn him. "Hello, Mother. You sound surprised." "I am. What are you doing here?" Maribel entered without waiting for an invitation. Her clothes were immaculate. Her expression told Allen she had not come for a casual visit. "I need to speak with you. Every time I call your secretary, you are in a meeting or out of the office." "What do you need?" "Not here. Let's go to that little coffee place you love so much." Allen's suspicion sharpened. Maribel had never cared enough to ask what places he enjoyed. If she knew about the coffee house, she had either been watching him or asking questions. Neither possibility was comforting. Allen leaned back in his chair. "Why do we need to leave the office?" "Because some conversations should not happen where employees can overhear them." "Then close the door." Maribel smiled without warmth. "Allen, do not be difficult. Charles is waiting downstairs." Allen stared at her. Every private conversation with Maribel eventually required him to conceal something, support a lie, or solve a problem she had created. He had spent his life assisting her schemes, first as a frightened child and later as a grown man terrified of losing Jonathan, the company, or the Sinclair name. "What did you do?" he asked. "I came to speak with my son. That does not mean I did anything." "It usually does." She glanced at the flowers resting on the side table. Essence's arrangement had begun to bloom. "Those are lovely. A friend grew them." "What kind of friend?" "The kind that gives someone flowers." Allen regretted saying even that much. His mother could turn one harmless detail into an investigation. Allen grabbed his keys. "Charles can drive us. I can drive myself." "There is no need. We are going to the same place." Allen closed the file on his desk. "You chose the place before you came." "Of course." Maribel spoke as though planning his movements was the most natural thing in the world. Allen stood and reached for his jacket. Jonathan was out of town. Maribel had chosen the timing deliberately, just as she had when he was a boy. She always approached when there was no one left to interrupt her. Allen told himself he was only going to hear what she wanted. He did not have to agree, but that was what he had always told himself. He followed her downstairs. Rain hammered against the glass doors as Charles hurried forward with an umbrella. Maribel stepped beneath it without breaking stride. Allen ignored the umbrella completely. Cold rain soaked through his Giorgio Armani suit within seconds, but for the first time all day, the chill felt honest. At the curb, Charles opened the rear door. Maribel entered first. Allen paused for just a moment. Behind him, through the rain-streaked glass, Sinclair marketing glowed against the dark afternoon sky. The reflection staring back at him was polished, successful, respected, and still trapped by the same woman who had controlled nearly every chapter of his life. He climbed into the car. The door closed with a heavy thud, shutting out the rain. Silence settled between them as Charles pulled away from the curb. Maribel broke it first. "Tell me about the woman." Allen kept his eyes on the window. "Her name is Essence." "Pretty name." She folded her hands in her lap. "Married?" Allen hesitated. "I don't know." "Children?" "I didn't ask." "Where does she work?" "Why does it matter?" Maribel smiled faintly. "Curiosity isn't a crime." Allen finally looked at her. "I've seen that look before." "What look?" "The one you're wearing when you've already decided someone is useful." Maribel laughed softly. "You give me far too much credit." "No, I know you." The smile faded just enough for Allen to recognize it. You always think the worst of me, because the worst usually turns out to be true." Charles continued driving through sheets of rain as neither of them spoke. Windshield wipers swept back and forth, filling the silence with a steady rhythm. Allen watched the coffee house disappear into the gray distance. He should have been thinking about his mother's questions. Instead, he saw Essence standing behind the counter, smiling as she arranged fresh flowers into a glass vase. She had no idea that a simple bouquet had placed her squarely in Maribel Sinclair's path. After several moments, Maribel spoke again, almost as if she were talking to herself. "I'd like to meet her." Allen turned slowly toward his mother. Every instinct inside him tightened. He had heard those words before. Whenever Maribel wanted to meet someone, someone's life was about to change. Allen looked back through the rain-covered window, his thoughts returning to the woman who had unknowingly reminded him of the only person who had ever loved him without conditions. He whispered so quietly that only he could hear it. "Stay away from her." Maribel simply smiled as the car disappeared into the storm. "Before you go." Allen thought he was simply protecting a woman who reminded him of someone from his past, but sometimes the greatest battles begin long before anyone realizes they're being fought. Now it's your turn. Do you think Allen truly loved Essence? Or do you believe he was still searching for the safety he once found in Lily? And here's another question. What do you think Maribel's real interest in Essence is? Is she simply curious? Or do you believe she's already planning something much bigger? I'd love to hear your thoughts and theories, so leave your answers in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, follow, and share. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to Whispers of Grace Stories, turn on all notifications, and join us every Thursday as another